finally here. The XH2S. I have waited for this camera for a really long time. I have been a Fujifilm user for about 3 years now. The XT3 was my first camera that was capable of 4K and all that. And from that camera, I have grown my business to support me full-time, and now my wife and I are both full-time. That really does lead me into my first topic as we discuss my first impressions with this Fujifilm XH2S, that's a mouthful, as we discuss this camera and what I like about it as a wedding filmmaker and also commercial videographer. The image quality, I don't really have to say too much about this. It's fantastic. That's one reason I love Fujifilm so much. I have really loved, in my opinion, the more organic look, the less digital look of Fujifilm. I know, some people might say the opposite. Some people might say Canon looks more filmic, or Sony, or whatever. You can't argue that Blackmagic, Red, all those look more filmic, or just less digital, I guess. However, I think Fujifilm does a really good job. And one reason probably is because they let you turn off noise reduction or reduce it a lot, and reduce the sharpness a lot. And I think that just helps a lot in that area. I think it looks really good. This was shot on F-Log2. Everything that you're gonna see was F-Log2. And I might like it. I don't know. I'm certain I'll like it, but it's going to take some getting used to for how to expose it. It seems to be noisier, but it seems like it will clean up easily. I'm messing around with it. I do like F-Log normal. Eterna 400 is even great. Eterna with the dynamic range at 400. Yeah, any of this footage that you're seeing here is F-Log2. Seems to be great with the image quality. But even if I don't like that, I still love F-Log, and I think you still get almost 13 stops of dynamic range with F-Log, which is still way up there, out of most cameras. So, yeah. This thing can shoot BRAW externally, which is pretty huge. So for commercial work, I typically will use my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, 4K. That's even more of a mouthful. Camera names are ridiculous. Can we not just call this the Fujifilm B2, video-centric camera number 2, V2. So being able to externally record B-RAW means I might be selling my Blackmagic. I have had that camera for a while. I love it. It's definitely going to do things that this camera can't do. It's more of a cinema camera. However, it also doesn't get used as much as it should. And I would like to simplify things. Right now, currently, I have 7 cameras, which is absolutely insane. I never wanted it to be like this. I have a problem. Basically, I just ordered these 2 XH2Ss. Yes, I am recording on one right now. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. If you're waiting for a XH2S, I'm so sorry. I need these. I desperately need these. Shooting weddings in Texas. It's been 106 degrees lately. Our cameras have been struggling. They've never struggled like this. I'll actually, the XT4 I know gives a lot of people issues, but it hasn't given me issues. The XT3 has been worse than the XT4, but neither of them have been problematic. We can talk about that in another video. Actually, if you are a Fujifilm shooter and you say your camera's overheating, I have a lot of solutions for you. So let me know in the comments if you do have issues. Also, please subscribe. We are going to be pumping out a lot of Fujifilm content because I'm doing a lot of tests on this XH2S to make sure that it fits what I need. Yeah, subscribe and stay tuned for all that content. We'll move on from B-RAW. Definitely going to be some tests with that down the road once I get my hands on a Blackmagic Video Assist. The next big topic for me is the IBIS. This is something that I've wanted in a camera for a while. I do have the XT4. However, the IBIS is in my opinion, unusable. So it stays off. I really have not liked it on the XT4. I think it looks really robotic and bad. This new one looks pretty good. It's not perfect. It doesn't look fully organic. However, when I'm not able to weigh my camera rig down, I think it's really usable. I think it's really good. It is not Panasonic level. I don't know how it compares to Sony, but it is a lot better than Canon. The full frame at least. I have not touched the R7. But the R6, not a big fan of the camera. I actually own it, but I use it exclusively for photography. The IBIS is a lot better than that camera. So right now, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's very usable. I'll probably mostly use IBIS for static or slight panning shots, anything like that. And so stoked for IBIS. One thing, a common misconception, but a misuse of IBIS, it really should not be a gimbal replacement. And so all these tests of people walking with IBIS, in my opinion, are pointless. If I want a smooth floating shot, I would be using a gimbal. If IBIS gets to that point, that would be fantastic, but it's not there yet. It's not as reliable as a nice, smooth, floating gimbal. To talk about one con with IBIS so far, from what I've gathered, is that I cannot use lens IS and IBIS separately. So I don't actually know if this is even possible, because I know the Canon doesn't do this. I don't know about Sony. Yeah, I know some camera systems you can't separate those two. And so, yeah, I have no idea if this is possible, but Fujifilm, if you can use exclusively lens OS and lens OIS or the internal IBIS, that would be fantastic, because right now I have a Metabone speed booster, which has been great. I love the image quality on it, everything. I have a Tamron 24-70 G2, which has been great. I love it. It's very sharp. The lens OS on the Tamron is pretty good. I used it on my XT3 and it was great there. It took out the jitters. The IBIS on the camera looks great. Those two combined have some weird things going on. I'll show you all examples. I have found a few hacks. We can go into that later, but I have noticed that with just normal stabilization, we'll show that, it looks acceptable. It actually looks pretty good with normal stabilization, but that's another step. I don't love it. So yeah, if we could just separate those two, that would be fantastic. Fujifilm. The next topic is ergonomics. So this camera, it feels great. It's just the right size, at least for me. I have pretty normal size hands, maybe a little bit bigger than average. So in my hands, it feels great. I can reach most of the buttons. That is one slight con, is I have a hard time reaching the ISO button and the white balance button and one of the customizable buttons. It's a little bit of a reach. I don't ever know what feels more normal, to reach it with my thumb or to reach it with my index finger. And so that is going to take some getting used to, but it's not the end of the world. Another ergonomic qualm that I have is that the dials cannot be assigned to anything but shutter speed or aperture, at least from what I've gathered. This seems like a bug. I don't know why I can't assign the rear dial to be ISO, especially considering most of the Fujifilm lenses have aperture adjustments on them. And so it's kind of strange to me. It's one more step. You have to push the ISO button. It's two more steps. You have to push the ISO button, adjust your ISO, and then you have to push it again. Additionally, you can adjust the direction of these two dials for shutter speed and aperture, but you cannot adjust it for when you hit the ISO button. It is the opposite direction of what is intuitive, and it throws me off every single time. I've been, basically sleeping with this camera for the past 24 hours trying to get used to it, and I have not gotten used to that one bit. So kind of strange. Maybe in a firmware update, we'll see that fixed. Also, why don't the rear dials push in? I don't really understand why these rear dials just can't push in, and then that could solve the aperture and ISO problem. Maybe there was a reliability issue there and they really want to make this a workhorse, but it just seems like a cheap move to not have that. Oh well. One pro though on the Ergonomics is you can change settings so fast, so quickly with 7 custom settings. It's amazing. You can set them to be all video, which is mostly what I have, or you can do like some photos, some videos. So if you're bouncing back and forth, the way I have it right now is 4K 60, 4K 24. I actually have more bitrate on the 4K 60 because I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that you would want a higher bitrate on, or like megabits per second on the 4K 60 versus the 24, which before that was a qualm I had. If you said 200, then it was 200 whether you switch between 24 and 60. And now with that preset dial, I can switch it real quick, real easy. I love it. The full-size HDMI, I don't need to say anything else. The Canon R5C doesn't even have full-size HDMI. So I think we know how serious Fujifilm is about making some video-centered cameras. This is a very video-centered camera. The CF Express Type B, I'm pretty stoked about because those cards are going to be, I think, used more and more on cameras. So you're moving forward if you're buying CF Express Type B. I think as far as I'm concerned, SD cards are not really as usable on cameras now with the need for recording 8K and all that. UHS 3 cards are ridiculously expensive. And it's just nice that these CF Express Type Bs are actually pretty affordable. I am using the Angelbird SE one here. Let's see. I'm using this bad boy and it seems to work. It seems to work in every single setting. So that's fantastic. A few settings that I love is just the fact that every single button, even the trash can button, I'm pretty sure, can be customized, which is fantastic. Except the dials. What the heck? That's weird. Anyway, I'll move on from the dials. But one setting that I'm really loving is the fix movie crop mode setting. And so what that setting does is it fixes the crop mode. And so if you're in like 4K 120 or something, probably something I will hardly ever use, except for very specific shots, maybe some product shots. Anyway, with that setting, you can crop to what that crop would be, like the ultimate crop. That way your camera's not bouncing back. So in 4K 24, it's a normal 1.5 times crop, a normal APS-C size crop. But if you go to 4K 24, then I think it's a 1.88. I'll have the actual one down there. But what you can do is you can be rolling in 4K 24 and then you might need a little extra reach and you can hit that fixed movie crop button and still 4K footage, it'll crop in to the sensor to that size, which is, I think, like I said, a 1.88. It effectively makes your like 70 millimeter if you're running a 24 to 70 with a speed booster. So I'm going to talk in normal terms because that's how I use my 24 to 70. So in full frame, 24 to 70, your 70 is going to become like 100 millimeter or so, which that's a lot of extra reach. That's one setting that I'm really loving. Also the 3.2 or the 3:2 aspect ratio open gate. The fact that we have that is amazing. The rolling shutter, just a lot of features and settings on this camera. It is so customizable. It is so close to being so perfect that I'm really loving it. One setting that I'm not stoked about is not being able to record ProRes to the CFast cards while recording another format to the SD cards. I understand you need CFast for, or CF Express, sorry, for ProRes, but I would love to be able to record a H.265 or H.264 to the SD card as a backup, or even the ProRes proxy. Like I feel like ProRes proxy is a small enough bitrate that you could record to a UHS2 or something card. However, it doesn't seem to be an option. Maybe that's not possible. I'm not sure. Like maybe that's just not something that can be done. However, I would love to see that if that could be done. I think that would really help me with my paranoia about only having something on one card. I really don't think this camera is going to have an overheating issue unless you're recording in ProRes with that open gate. Then you might want to consider a fan if you're doing long takes with that. But I just did a test in 100 degrees for about 25 minutes rolling at 4K 60 the whole time. The previous XT4 would maybe give me a warning. That's one thing I love about Fujifilm though. Like if you get a warning, it's a pretty early warning. You can just start to take it easy on it, and you won't have any issues. Usually I could turn it off and it would go off after 5 seconds of letting it rest, but I didn't even see a warning. It didn't even feel warm to the touch. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'll actually have more in-depth videos about IBIS, overheating, all those things. So remember to subscribe, but I definitely don't think it's going to be an issue for now. The last thing I'll talk about is autofocus. I'm probably the last person that needs to talk about autofocus because I don't prefer it. Having the Canon R6, one of the leading cameras with autofocus, I don't like it. I have so many instances where I'm just constantly moving the box because it's jumping to someone else. I don't understand why that's easier than just pulling focus yourself. I understand situationally. I understand situation. Whoa, I can't say that word. Let's try this one more time. I understand situationally. Sometimes autofocus is great. Like sometimes I can't pull focus as good as autofocus. Well, probably most of the time. However, I think usually it looks really good and organic and it doesn't ever jump. I have never had a shot where my focus just jumps to the background because I'm manually controlling it. So I prefer manual focus, but I will touch on it. What you're seeing right now is autofocus with the XH2S. It's on face and eye. I'm looking at the screen right now, and it looks like it's tracking me pretty nice. It is jumping constantly from my left to right, so there might be a really annoying flicker. That's not my fault. It's Fujifilm's fault. But I will say this is on the Sigma 18-35 with the Fringer adapter, and this has been a better combo for me out of any of the Fujifilm lenses that I've used, including like their normal zooms, all of those lenses, except the brand new ones that have come out. I have not tried those. I actually sold every Fujifilm lens I had because if I needed autofocus, this one did a better job than any other Fuji lens, and it really is a match made in heaven for a Super 35 camera. So all that to say, if you're seeing good autofocus here, you're gonna have good success, great success. I don't know why I did that. You'll love it, but it's not gonna be perfect. It's probably still not gonna be Canon or Sony, but it'll be close. The only thing I don't love, really, from what I gathered, is it seems like there's no zone. The biggest box I can get is like a medium-sized single point, and sometimes I like to have a slightly bigger zone without it touching the edges, or without it being a full area. I don't know if that makes sense, but I liked being able to have a box that was larger, and I can't figure that out. Maybe I'm dumb. Like I said, I'm not an autofocus guy. I'm not the person that should be talking about this, really. So take that with a grain of salt. It seems to work pretty good. It will be an improvement over the XT4. The only other thing about autofocus is I don't love that it's now just a programmable button and it's not the switch that does manual, continuous, and single. I really liked that switch. Overall, pretty stoked about this camera. I really think that they moved in the right direction. I'm actually really impressed. If you consider Panasonic, Sony, Canon, all those brands that have been making cameras for a while, that are video centric, Fujifilm's killing it right now. If you just think about what they did, being the first with the Super 35 4K at 60 with 10-bit, and now they're leading the way again, I think, with, you know, putting open gate in here and allowing BRAW, and really the third best autofocus out there. It's Canon and Sony neck and neck, and the Fujifilm's really right behind them. It's not enough for me to want to use it still, but I think as a wedding videographer, this is going to be amazing. And really, even as a commercial videographer, being able to rig this up. Fujifilm had a lot of amazing productions and videos that they released where they hired professionals to use this camera, and they would rig it up, put cinema lenses on it, and it looked amazing. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. If you could subscribe, that would be awesome. We're gonna have a lot more content coming out from this camera. I do anticipate testing a lot of things. I'll also have a wedding shot on it really soon. So yeah, if you have specific questions or if there's specific things you want me to test, drop it in the comments below. Or if you just have general thoughts about the camera, I'd love to hear from y'all. So other than that, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Later.